Okay, so welcome to the Sunday Sangha. We got a nice group today, and Carl has a question. Carl, would you like to share with the group what's happening? Christoph.
Do you mean me,
Yes,
Dhammarato? Or okay.
yes. You were the one who had the question.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I have a 14-year-old dog who is living with me all his life, and now the dog is terminally ill. So nothing can be done anymore. The dog is not in pain at this moment, but I suppose he will be in pain soon. And then the question is, uh, should we euthanize the dog to lessen his suffering, or is that something because some Buddhist teachers seem to take the point that this is something we really cannot do. So I'm not sure how to handle this.
Well, how do you feel about it right now?
Uh, I'm not sure. I feel it's not okay to let the dog suffer, but then on the other hand, we should not take life.
Okay, so let me ask this question to everybody here individually. Do you want someone else to determine when you die? Do you want that? Do you want
No,
somebody else to make the choice of when you die?
no, I will not do that. No, I will not like
Okay.
that.
Right.
Only if I'm not
Okay.
in a position to make the informed choice myself. So,
Well,
you know,
you'd be surprised how much control over our own deaths we have. And uh, animals have died naturally for a long time. Basically, um, to be honest with you, I grew up in the United States in the West when they still had horses, ran around with horses. We had a horse in the backyard, and all the movies are filled with horses, old cowboy movies. And so the whole culture then is around that when you're out and the horse breaks his leg, that they shoot the horse to put it out of its misery. But nobody ever bothers to ask the horse. Basically, what we're really getting at is that it's more convenient for the humans that we put the horse or the dog out of its misery, and that uh, there's a whole lot involved with it. And to be honest with you, a veterinarian will make more money off of giving your dog a 25-cent worth of poison to kill him, and that he dies in his sleep right in front of you, but they charge you a lot of money for that euthanasia. And so that's actually quite a lot of the business is let's go ahead and kill the dogs, because if you take the dog home and it dies on its own, the vet doesn't make any money. And so it's gotten part of our culture of putting the animal out of its misery. But to be honest with you, no one here is willing to put themselves in that position of your carekeeper deciding they're going to pull the plug because you're just too much work. I mean, there you are laying in a hospital bed, connected to all of this equipment and the drug and all of that, and um, this is a actual issue when someone is not conscious in the sense of they dead or not. And still they want to either pull the plug or not pull the plug, and it makes big news and all of that kind of stuff. But imagine that you're laying there and you're conscious and you can answer the question. They ask you, hey, do we want to pull the plug now? What are you going to say? One more breath and then pull the plug, or maybe, get out of here or something. But nobody wants to die, and no animal wants to die, and it's going to happen anyway. And so, why do all of us get involved in the point or the time of death? Now, here's another aspect for this, and that is that just like an abortion or anything else in that really big attitude is that many people who put their pets to death mourn more over the loss of the dog than if you let the dog die naturally. And part of the way that is that you can be very tender and take care of the animal and it just dies. Be there for it to be natural. Save yourself some money and save yourself a whole lot of grief by letting the animal do what the animal needs to do for itself. So I'll open this now to questions. Anybody got a question? We're only 5 minutes in and we're all turkey teary-eyed.
I think some people
Yes.
would choose to die, but animals aren't able to talk about it. They're not able to
Right.
say.
That's right. They don't have any choice, do they?
So I mean, that's probably why people would consider putting their
We're
dog
not
down or
listening.
something.
Oh, that's another thing. Oh, you got it. If you listen to the animal, he will tell you. But you got to be able to listen closely and be in tune with the dog. And most of us that are at the end of our lives, what we want is love and care and affection, not medication.
I was going to ask, in such a situation with the dog, if you decide to let nature take its course and not intervene, uh, is it ethical or not to forego medicine for the dog? So, because you can rack up, a lot of expenses just prolonging its life and, supposedly making it better or lessening its misery. But again, it can't tell you anything, or at least, unless you are very in tune with animals. So, do you think it's ethical in that case to do medical interventions?
Up to a point. Okay, there is always a point, and you would have to make that decision of where to draw that line in the circumstance. That all we can do is talk about it in a hypothetical situation. So, the first thing I'd like to talk about, in fact, is Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and the helicopter. The king of the king of Thailand in Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's last days, the king of Thailand offered to send the royal helicopter down, land at Wat Suan Mok, and put Bhikkhu Buddhadasa on it and whisk him off to Sirikit Hospital in Bangkok. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa said, no, don't bother. Don't even crank up the helicopter. Just leave it where it is. Let it be killed. And that's a really important point, is that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa chose to die naturally rather than being crowded around by doctors, postponing it a little bit. We kind of know when it's time to go. There's something within us. The Buddha knew it. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa knew it. Many, many times people will know when it's getting close to time to go. Animals know it also. Trying to get resigned to the fact that our breaths are counted now, that they're coming soon, maybe a day or two. There's, in fact, stories about um, they have a celebration at Grant. There she is in the hospital on her deathbed, and all the grandkids and all of the family members and aunts and uncles come in and sing happy birthday to grandma and wish her well and pray for her and all this kind of stuff. And then they leave and go home. She's dead the next day. Then they're all full of grief. Why? Because they didn't recognize that she knew that this was the goodbye. And so everybody else in is a big state of grief because they missed their opportunity to say goodbye. So we wind up causing ourselves extra grief because we're not ready for things to happen. We keep postponing them, or in this case, trying to get it over with, rather than be there and know what's going on. Or as you've probably heard from time to time, wakey, wakey. In a way, this is a marvelous opportunity to witness death. Wouldn't miss it at all.
You know, can I make a comment on this? So I've been a farmer, and I raised a lot of animals, and you get into really difficult situations with that all the time. And I made the decision kind of recently to probably not raise animals going forward in the future, even though I enjoy the whole process, but it really complicates life, these questions of taking responsibility for another animal, and at that point, like, what is really natural? Like, if I'm raising pigs outside, and it's the winter time, and I have a sick pig, like what at that point is natural? Is it natural to bring it inside, even though it's supposed to be living outside? And there's all these difficult situations. But it's difficult because they want to be outside, right? It's like, I mean, they're gonna be miserable like inside because they're used to it, and yeah. So there are all these difficult situations, and then there's times where, like, you know, the animal's gonna die, like you just feel it in your heart because you've raised enough animals, and like you can either let it happen and it's gonna happen 6 hours later, or you do it then. And yeah, and it's all just complicated, and you can see why the Buddha talks about, like, oh, see the guy with the cows over there, monks, you can be really glad that you don't have any cows to worry about, because it just creates a lot of excessive stress that is really, like, we can judge whether it's necessary or not. And my friends all have dogs, and they all have animals, and I can go and enjoy their animals, but I don't have to take on the stress myself. So I personally, I don't even know if I'm ever going to have animals again, really. And I've also been in the situation with my dad in the hospital, in a coma, and having to think with my family, like, hey, should we pull the plug, or shouldn't we? The doctors are kind of saying, you know, that. And it's so difficult, you know. I mean, these decisions are really challenging, and we made the decision not to, and I'm glad now, because, you know, he was able to wake up and make some sort of recovery, but there's still a part of me that's like, I don't even know if it was the right decision or not. And yeah, so.
Yeah, the issue, I think, at the bottom of it is do we want to be responsible for taking another life, or do we want to let it go its own course? This is basically a kind of a foundation of the teaching of the Buddha that comes into, in that part that we know so well, clinging, or in that case, caring, that we often care too much for the animal, care too much, and so we want to put it out of its misery. But then after it's dead, we still care too much about the animal. Now we can't bring it back, so we regret our actions. This is a natural process that we go through. And it's hard to keep recollecting, well, I did it to put it out of the dog's misery, but look how much misery is left. But if you can cleanly say goodbye to the animal when it's dying, and as Joe just mentioned, he got me out of that jam very easily. We know that it's happening if we're paying attention. And the story that I told about Grandma is only Grandma was the only one out of 30 people in that room that knew that this was it. She was dying. She was ready to go. This is her last hurrah. And so this is what also that we can become attuned to, that maybe the dog's not ready quite yet to die. Maybe he still wants to live. But you can all recognize that you can get yourself into such a state where every breath is difficult, where every joint hurts. It's even hard to roll over, and you may be laying there in your own feces and can't get up. The only option out of this is to stop breathing. And eventually you might make that choice. So this is a situation that you can recognize. This is why the Buddha is all about old age, sickness, and death. We're all going to get old. Some of us are quite a ways down that path. And all of us are going to get sick, and all of us are going to die. Everybody dies. Nobody wants to die, but everybody dies. It's actually instinctual. The self-preservation instinct, in fact, that which has been keeping you alive your whole life, in the last moments of life, it's what killed you. So this self-preservation instinct, by the way, its primary communication method is through fear. So the reason we stayed alive is because all of a sudden we became afraid of walking across that street. Or maybe we touch something around electricity and we just get a little bit of shock and we pull back. But if we'd have grabbed hold of that thing, we'd have gotten electrocuted. Wise enough through our own fear to stay alive in this particular moment. Jamie, it looks like you know what it's like. You've done some almost stupid things in your life, but all of a sudden you stop doing it just in time to survive. So this idea then is that we keep this fear going, and oftentimes it's too much. And the real issue of fears is always about life and death. And so when we're confronted with a dear friend or an animal or a family member or whatnot like that, their dying triggers a mindset of death that we pick up on. In other words, we're afraid to die, and here it is right in front of me. This is part of the reason why the industry of hospitalizations, a morgue in the basement, and the meat wagon, and the hearse, and the funeral home business has all gotten big is because in the old days, Grandma died at home. The family had to take care of her in her last days. We didn't know how to do that very well. But now death has been moved out of the home into the factory. Think about that the next time you go to the hospital. The main reason why people go to the hospital is so the family doesn't have to watch them die. So, if we understand it from that perspective, then we can recognize, oh no, we can find a way to handle our death in advance. We don't have to be afraid of it. It's going to happen anyway, whether we're afraid or not. Why do we have all of these false positives about being afraid? We go around being afraid of all kinds of things. We get letters in the mail and all of a sudden we're afraid. We see things in the newspaper or on television, all of a sudden we're afraid. And nothing's changed except the dots on the screen. That's the only thing that's changed, and here we've just all pumped up because of some mental thing that we've dreamt up that must be dangerous for us. And guess what? We bring on that to us. Whatever we're afraid of, we will draw it to us. Whatever we're thinking about, we will manifest that. Buddha talks about it in the sense that the mind is the forerunner for all things. So if you keep in mind, oh, this is a really good breath and I'm feeling really good, and let that dog die and I'll be happy and and sad at the same time and love that dog to death while it dies, then we can take care of it. Good. But if we say, oh, poor dog, oh, poor me, oh, poor life, oh, it's so terrible that we die and all of that kind of stuff, then you're taking yourself in that hole. This is also about the teachings of anāpānāsati. Let's keep brightening the mind. Let's not go into the pity party that the dog is having. In fact, the dog would be much better off if you played with the dog and scratched the dog and was tender with the dog, and even if she's just laying or he's laying there on the floor and can't hardly get up, at least he really loves the fact that you can sit there and read whatever book you want to or watch the television and just take your hands and just rub his back and forth, back and forth. Give him that stimulus. But if it's possible, the thing that I would highly recommend in this case is go get a new puppy. Bring new life in. Let that new puppy climb all over that old dog. Wag and lick its face and just let that new dog imprint on the old one. And then when you let the old dog die, you've already started imprinting yourself on the puppy. And so it will be easier, much easier to let the old dog go. But if you have the old dog and then you're so full of grief that you're without that, it may take you a week or two to figure out, hey, I can go get a new puppy. So it would actually be a good idea to go get the new puppy now. If that's possible, then that would be my advice. To go maybe get two puppies. But also recognize that 10 or 15 years later, the cycle is finished and you're going to have to go all through it again. And by then you'll be what? 80? So that's the whole idea then is that let life be on and be natural. That the old dog would much rather die in the arms of you and the puppy than on some metal slab in the lab.
I've heard that many animals like to die alone. I mean, they feel when it's coming and they try to find like a place, they go into the woods or something. So I guess that's not true for domesticated dogs, because I've heard like of friends like my dog just like went somewhere and went into a bush and lied down and
Right.
and
Okay.
died over
So
there. So
what we can say then from nature is that when the dog gets sick and vulnerable, he knows he's sick and vulnerable, and so he goes to find a place to hide. And you're looking at it from the wild side, but actually from the domestication side, that means that the sick dog will exhibit going and hiding in the closet, finding places to that's secure, that it's at least got three sides. Maybe it's dark, that kind of thing. A place under the bed. Okay. So that's actually, thanks for mentioning this. Yes, that the dogs not only know when it's time, but they will exhibit behaviors that show that they know. So that if the dog has a favorite place, then make that place kind of a hidey hole. Maybe put a card, if he's got a place on the floor that he just likes to stay at, maybe put a cardboard box around it sometime when he's laying there asleep or whatever, and he may like that. Just find a place where the dog feels safe. That's what they're looking for. Everybody wants to die in peace. Nobody wants to be dying one piece at a time as the alligator eats us one leg at a time. Out in peace. So the dog is looking for a place to hide.
I love how dark the topics today are. It's not usually the case. Usually we're all, don't worry, be happy. But sometimes the bummer is, too much to handle with don't worry, be happy, and you kind of have to write it out.
Well, don't
Sounds
worry.
very
we,
Russian.
We can handle mentally, even though this is the time to die.
yeah,
Okay, even in the sense that people sometimes they just want to roll over and get away from the world. Okay, that's natural kind of behavior that's associated with dying. There's just so many signs that people don't know about because we've been hidden from culture. So actually, their being in the house with a dog as it's dying would be an enormous education. Enormous education about the kinds of things that Yasin and I are talking about is what will be the behavior. Where are they looking to hide? Does he want to stay close to you? Is he even able to get up? And if he's not, is he able to wag his tail when you talk to him? So these will be the signs, because if he can't even wag his tail or move his head, that means that he's pretty well ready to go within hours. And it's actually quite a joy to be there, to know that you're going to go, if you're lucky, to go through the same thing. In this case, I would be happy to die in your care. That's the that's the way of looking at it. Is that we can care for the dying, and then no others will care for us as we die. So that's my advice to you: is don't take the dog to the vet. Bring a new puppy home, and let nature take its course. Well, this has only taken a few minutes, about 20 minutes or so. Does anybody else have any other questions?
is it okay to continue with the dark topics a bit, because I want to clear something up on the nobody chooses to die topic, to see
Okay.
what you really think about it, or we can switch. I have a different question that is,
Oh,
much
I'm ready to
much more
die. I'm
practical.
ready to talk about dying. Let's go.
Okay,
Take
so
any dog. I'm ready to
with modern medicine and stuff, we prolong lives of people so much that we now have a lot of these, what I consider like to be the worst nightmare to happen to someone personally, but like also a nightmare to everyone around them, which is like neurodegenerative disease, like dementia, multiple sclerosis, and Alzheimer's, all these kinds of things. And I think you are painfully aware of that. I think I've heard you mention that your mom went that way. And yeah, I've had friends, I've had relatives who were in such predicaments. So if you are in that situation where you're in a country where there is assisted suicide, if you know that you're about to embark on the worst trip of your life and bring a lot of misery to your friends and family, and just kind of get lost and essentially at some point stop being you and stop being able to make rational choices, isn't it a wise choice if you are able to get off the ride? So you say everybody wants to live, there's the self-preservation instinct, but we exactly have the sati, we have the ability to override our behavior and maybe decide, okay, this is a good moment to get off the ride. I mean, it was great, it was cool, but from this point on it won't be a fun ride. This roller coaster is going to crash hard. So I wanted to know what you think about on that question. So assisted suicide, people with like um, a period of life that is just going to be absolute hell for them and their relatives. And the person, they might be an enlightened Buddhist master, and they might go through the whole thing and be happy and stuff, and even when they're reduced to very low mental capacity, still be able to be happy because they have those skills ingrained. But like their friends and relatives aren't Buddhist masters. So how do you think about that?
Wow, there's so much to think about. You mentioned several topics there in a row, and I already had something prepared, and then you talked about something else, and I forgot what I was going to say.
Whatever you like. Sorry.
Okay. Um, the first thing that you were talking about actually was basically when do we draw the line, and what do we use to draw the line with? All right. And the crossing of the line means now it's time to die. And everybody makes that decision, whether you've got a spear in your chest, or your brains just got blown out, or you're actually, let us say, flying in the air. And right now, when you had that thought, you're at 10,000 feet, but now you're at 9,000 feet, and the Earth's coming up pretty quick, okay? Or that your body is completely doused with gasoline and already you set it on fire. Can you actually sit here until that happens, all of it? Or are you going to be like the Frenchman and jump up and run away because he can't stand it? So the point is that we all kind of choose that this is too much now. The question is that a stupid thing to think? Or is it a wise thing to think? Because this may be it. This is the time to let it go. Right? Maybe now is the time to let it go. But if you've got to use a gun to do it, this may be an ignorant way to do it, an ignorant way out. All right. So there's actually kind of a distinction in the language between euthanasia and suicide. An assisted suicide is actually just assisted euthanasia. The reason we're choosing to die is because I don't have the equipment to live anymore. Physical body has just gone too far. Okay, the body's ready to expire. So most suicides that we're thinking about, though, the body's okay, it's just the mind's all screwed up. And I can't stand myself anymore. And I want to get away from me because I'm really hard on myself, right? And so the gun is not ever the answer to that situation. The question is can you give that person that idea? And one of the things that has been done in psychiatrists and other offices from time to time is to have an actually loaded, ready to fire, big bore pistol, cocked and ready to go. Dear lady, you want to commit suicide? Do it in my office. I promise you I'll clean up the mess, and it will be quite a show. Do it for me right now. Here's the weapon. Take it. Guess what? Nobody will take up a psychiatrist on them. And not only that, the important thing is that this thing has no firing pin, so it's not going to go off anyway. But that's the whole point about the suicide at that level is that then that when you're actually confronted with it, you will say no. But what happens is that people often commit suicide in a pretend way. They want to get really sick. They want you to have mercy upon them. They want you to take care of them, etc., like that. And so they give themselves suicide, but not really intending to go all the way through it. That happens often with barbiturates and other sleeping pills and whatnot like that. I'll take a little bit of sleeping pills, and then they'll save my life. They'll pump my stomach or whatever, and that didn't always work out. And so off they go. So that's one of the kinds of suicides that people have. Many of the suicides we attribute to suicide, which is in fact nothing.
Can I make a short comment on that?
Oh, absolutely.
Because many people have pretty negative misconceptions about that. It's also a structural societal issue that people use those means to make themselves or their misery known. If the communication would be better in the first place, those things wouldn't happen that often. That's it.
Can you explain a little bit more about what you're saying?
I mean, people wouldn't think about taking pills, not even because they saw it in a movie sometime or something like this, but it wouldn't be triggered. This way of behavior wouldn't be triggered if society would be a society that is gentle and wise and with the right intention and so on and so on.
Actually, you're right. You're pointing at a particular thing, and that is it is better to get it over with now, because when they catch me, it's really going to be bad. And then I die, and then I'm dead. It's better to get rid of the torture first and just go ahead with the death, because those are my two choices: either to die now or wait, get caught, tortured, and die. And there's many examples, movies about it, and things like that to make that kind of choice. I would
That's one way
recommend
to
you
look at it.
guys. Pardon?
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
Yes, okay. So I would recommend each and every one of you to avoid those kind of situations in advance. Don't get yourself caught in a box. This is what wisdom is really all about. Is take a look at what you're doing so that we don't get ourselves cornered. But that's what there is, in fact, only one way that you are ever going to get cornered if you're wise, and that is that the body just has had enough. It is ready to go. You can't do anything but go with it. Okay. All the other cases is that we wind up getting killed through stupidity. Much of that has to do with, let us say, uh, bringing upon us that which we fear the most. That we bring it on. Um, the people who get barked at are the ones who are afraid of the dogs. People who are not afraid of dogs, the dogs don't bark at them. That's the kind of example that I'm talking about, is that we actually bring unto ourselves from that which we're afraid of. Or a better way, and more close to what the Buddha teaches, is that the mind is the forerunner to everything. So whatever you, here's a little saying: whatever you feel, you'll think. Whatever you think, you'll say. Whatever you say, you'll do. Whatever you do will become a habit. Everything that becomes a habit becomes your destiny. All from that thought, thinking. Whatever you're thinking, that will lead to whatever your life is. So this is what a practice of anāpānāsati is all about, is to start thinking in a way that we actually want to live our lives. And we bring about that which we think about. And if you think about fearful things, you'll bring fearful things to you. You'll find them. Then in psychology, this is called confirmation bias, that we see what we believe everywhere. We confirm it. We find things to prove that my position is correct. And then we kind of ignore everything that disagrees with what we believe in. And this is a confirmation bias that we all live under all of the time. We can't get out of it. But guess what? We can kind of accept that it exists and then rewire it so that we confirm our biases and know that this is how I'm biased, and recognize that I can change that bias any time that I want to. And I continue to choose to keep this bias, because this is a happier bias than being unhappy biased. So that's the way of understanding that we actually, our thoughts bring to us that which we have. So in this example that we're talking about, bring that new puppy into the house and have happy puppy thoughts, rather than dwelling on the sick dog and having sick, dead thoughts. And so we can actually reprogram our lives that way in this practice of anāpānāsati, is to keep brightening the mind, gladdening the mind, getting out of death, sickness, destruction. I made a problem. I did a boo-boo. I got to go hide. Um, oh, poor me, I'm not good enough. We've all had these kind of thoughts. And that leads us into those kind of feelings, those kind of behaviors, those kind of habits, that kind of a destiny. So when we start rewiring, that means that we keep changing the thoughts into doing something positive, uplifting. I can handle this. Wow, I feel good right now. Oh, this is a good breath. This moment is really great. This is the kind of thoughts that we have leading to that feeling of championship, that your life is and you're the emperor of your own pile of dirt. Every one of you is an emperor. The question is, are you going to be struggling, being buried under your pile of dirt, struggling to get out of it, or just sitting on top of the world? This is an attitude change that can be reprogrammed through the habit of over and over and over again, changing the unwholesome thoughts into wholesome thoughts. Over and over and over again. This is the practice. To change our wiring, change the way that we think. Turn every lemon into lemonade. You know how we turn every lemon into lemonade? We add sugar and ice. What's the ice? Chill, baby, chill. Just chill out, water it down, and sweeten it up. Then all of a sudden, we've got lemonade, got a nice juice to drink. This is the way, it's like becoming like a Pollyanna. Let everything be okay the way that it is. We're on top of the world because we've decided that the world is actually an okay place. We're the boss here. So, with that attitude, then, we can handle the grief of the loss of a dear pet. We can handle that. We don't have to put the dog out now because we can't handle that he's dying. We can go ahead and handle that. Love him tenderly while he's alive and let him pass peacefully as he goes. So let this be a meditation or a training for you. Maintain your happiness rather than being in grief over the dog, because the dog would rather you be happy and attending him happily rather than you grieving with him. It's always our choice. Are we going to do it happily or not? Are you going to die happily or not? Are you going to be sick and happily sick, or are you going to be miserable when you're sick? How about getting old? Are you going to be happily when you're old, or are you going to be miserable when you're old because you want to be young again, and that ain't going to happen? Old is old, and it's going to happen to every one of you. Buddha even had a poem one time that why should I be prideful? Pride for being alive. Why should I be pride when I'm going to die? And then pride for being healthy. Why should I be prideful for healthy? Because I'm going to get sick. And pride for um, being youthful. Because getting youthful is just a passing thing, and we're going to spend a whole lot more years thinking that we're old than we did when we thought we were young. And guess what? Nobody wants to be the age that they are. Every 6-year-old wants to be 7. Every 7-year-old wants to be 8. They always go at least 7.5 when they're 6 3/4. And then when we're 18, we want to be 19. When we're 17, we want to be 18. Whatever it is, we don't want it. When we're 35, we want to be 32. Everyone wants to change and lie about their age. Have you ever, any one of you, are you willing to admit, have you ever lied about your age? Okay, so that's the whole idea about being dissatisfied. And guess what? That dissatisfaction will follow you into old age, and you'll, in old age, find a whole lot of things to be dissatisfied about. But if you get in the habit of joy now, then when you go into old age, you'll go into old age joyfully. That's your attitude about it now. Your choice. You're going to be old and happy or old and miserable. Going to be sick and happy or sick and miserable? Are you going to die happy or die miserable? Those are your choices. Unless, of course, you're not lucky. I mean, this is if you're lucky. If you're really, really lucky, you'll get old, you'll get sick, and you die. Why is that? Because if you're not lucky, you die before you get a chance to be old and sick. You die young, and that's not a very wise thing to do. So, this whole thing about death is that we have to get unattached to it. We have to stop caring about it. We have to just let it be a natural kind of thing that happens, and that we can just watch the show, so that we can get old happily, we can get sick happily, and we can die happily. Because that's the real choice that we have, is how you're going to manage your own feelings. We're already in a bad habit of having bad feelings. We've already been programmed that way, so we have to unprogram it by repeating over and over and over again wholesome, happy thoughts. That's the real teachings of the Buddha right there. Is that when we cling to things, when it dies, grieve. And I invite you to not grieve about that old dog, that you should be very happy that he's been in your life, giving you all kinds of joy. That's the way that we should look at the friends that we've got, is people who bring us joy, but they're all temporary. All come and go. Lose everything someday. We'll lose a whole lot before then. So enjoy the dog while you've got him alive, rather than grieving upon him when he dies. Let him go. Let it all go. Everything will be fine. So does anybody have any other questions? Veda, you got such a big smile on your face.
Well, practice is good.
That's a good report.
If
Christoph,
no,
did we cover the topic for you well enough, or do you have any extra questions about death and dying and caring for the dead and dying?
Do you hear me?
Yes, I'd hear you. I do.
I've just moved because somebody came in. I went up, so I'm not sure if my connection is good here.
No, we watched you move around.
Okay.
Enjoyed the tour.
So no, you've really answered my question. It was something I more or less thought myself, but I was not wise enough or strong enough to make the correct decision. So I have no more doubt in my mind that in this case euthanasia is not the good choice. So I have to take care of him until the last moment.
Sadhu. Sadhu. That's good. Yes, if we can all see that. I think that you'll actually enjoy it much more, because you were in a state of despair and worry and doubt, and now you feel comfortable. You know what to do.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have any questions or anything about this? Or we, Yasin, do you will jump right back into it again?
well, I had questions, but we can leave them for one-on-one there. Beginner level stuff, let's say.
Okay. All right.
If nobody else has anything and we have time, I can ask if it's useful for the
I
others
mean,
to listen.
I have a question like related to this, about, because you're talking about like grieving after an animal, and I don't know. I mean, like for me, I mean, you can probably tell, anytime I think about my animals that have gone through situations, difficult situations, and I've watched them die, it brings up really strong emotions for me. as you can see. And I mean, I think it's okay. I guess it's okay to be like that. But yeah, I just wonder any comments about the after period, because for some of the animals, I mean, you can just mention the name and like it's been many years, but I will just instantly be crying again. So yeah.
I like that in you. That's tender-hearted. That's a form of compassion. Okay. But you can actually have those feelings and turn them around from the feeling of grief into the feeling of, wow, I feel so grateful that I was there for them, that I learned a lot. They were dear friends, these animals that have died. Right? Grief can become joy. Okay, so think about it like that. Even if you start to cry, that's okay. Cry with tears of joy. There's such beauty in this world. You don't have to cry for grief. So turn that around. Let yourself actually go to the depths of those feelings of how much you loved that animal. That's a genuinely good, positive feeling, not the tearing away of the loss of it. Actually, now not no longer going to grieve over your animal. You're to now be joyful that you knew the animal. So be very happy that you knew him or her, it, or them. Yes, you had your hand up, Gustav.
Yes, I wanted to comment. It's more or less related to what Joe says. I had to make the same decision 4 years ago. I actually have 3 dogs, so 2 left. So 3 years ago, I had to put a dog down because it was really, he could not get up anymore and was laying in his feces, etc., etc. So at that time, I took the decision to make the euthanasia. But as you said, it seemed to be the wise choice, but actually I did it more or less more for myself, because I could not handle it. And afterwards, I felt really bad for a long time.
That's really interesting. I just warned you of that, and here you are expressing that that was out. I mean, it is a really terrible, terrible feeling to know that you've been responsible for others' death. Been there, done that. Squirrel. I was 14, and I almost never got over it. So, uh, that's how we feel when we do that, when we're really open and understanding that we all have this craving, this instinct for self-preservation, and that basically that's the only right that any animal has. You talk about, Bill of Rights and the rights that we have as citizens. Basically, the only right that we should have is whether we can continue to breathe out, stay alive. That's the most important, in fact, the only thing there is to stay alive. If you die, what does anything matter anymore? Nothing matters after that. So the only thing that should matter is our own staying alive and recognizing that the dog has that same kind of attitude. The only thing we care about is, can I actually manage this next breath? It may become so difficult. There's a wide variety of reasons why the next breath should become difficult, but we're underwater, under a pillow, hanging on the cross, or it's just too much work. Exhausted, literally. It's too much work to take the next breath. That's how most people go out. It's always it's the respiration issue. We just stop breathing. So with that regard, it may be a good idea to get those muscles working correctly. Get that stuff pumped up and working correctly and ready to go so that we can, with that strong mental attitude, yes, I can take that next breath. I can stay alive. I can make it here. We can do this. But there will eventually come that time when, no, sorry, this is it. We all die. The question is can I just let it go? Just drop it. Last caring there is can I take this next breath? And will it? Now, there's also possibilities of much faster death, like just getting your brains blown out or something like that, or blow up next to a bomb or something like that, and then we don't have any choice. What I'm talking about here is that I wish each one of you to have a really, really choice to watch your own death happily. Best way to go. To know, to see. And so, because that's so important, it's actually probably a pretty good idea for us to practice in advance of that. And the place that I recommend that is start watching that you know when you're going to sleep at night. Watch it and catch it and see what it is like. Are you capable of being able to tell sleep is actually coming? A darkness is falling over you. If you can start watching that, then you can see death itself. You can stare it right in the face as it's coming. And so this is actually a training for the yogis, hundreds or maybe thousands of years ago, is to be awake till you're going to sleep. Because that's the training, to be awake while you're dying. So I thought that I would give that sort of tidbit in there for you. When you're practicing anāpānāsati at night when you're going to sleep, as you said, can you actually watch yourself sleep? Mindfully going to sleep is the way they say it. And so that's a good practice. Just lay there, oh, this feels so good. I have no place to go and nothing to do for the next 8 hours. I don't have to sleep at all. I can just sit here and watch the mind.
It's actually a firework. It's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
If you can see all those little processes coming and going and disintegrating.
Yeah, it's a great show in there. Yeah, a lot of little neurons spinning around and popping here and there and whatnot like that. It's quite a show. And we could just sit there and enjoy the show, watching the thing slow down and change states into sleep. Like a darkening or a blacking out or going into a kind of darkness. So I invite each one of you to start playing with that thing. Start using your going to sleep at night as a practicing for your own death. Why do we do that? Well, because it's a lot of fun. And it also gets us ready for death in a way so that we're no longer afraid much of it. And now that's the fearlessness that the Buddha talks about is we must become fearless. We have to actually be able to take over this self-preservation mechanism, train it like a puppy so that we're only afraid when we absolutely need to be afraid, and the rest of the time we're not. We're not afraid at all of anything. Yes, Carl.
Yeah, and then when you get to wake up, you get to celebrate
Yes.
all over again.
Yes, exactly so. Yeah, I made it through the night. I'm still alive. What a nice breath this is the way that we would wake up in the morning. Yes, right. That's a good point. So we could actually practice anāpānāsati as we go to sleep at night and as we wake up in the morning. First thing that we do, take a deep breath and say, wow, I'm still alive. What a wonderful day this is going to be with me still here. And I can take a deep breath and feel like a champion of the world. Feel good about yourself, knowing that you can handle anything this morning. Then when we get out of bed, we don't get out of bed with dread. We get out of bed actually by hopping right out of bed. We're ready to go. I can handle this day for sure. So this is a way of practicing anāpānāsati a little bit when we go to bed at night and a little bit when we get up in the morning. And it'll really start to change the way you sleep and the way you wake up, and change the attitude through the whole day. The attitude of, we could do this. We lose words like hard and try at work. We start using words dance and play and toy. This is the new vocabulary. So, Veda, you got your hand up again. Good.
One question to the waking up process, integrating practice. Going to sleep is a very natural thing for me to practice there, and also dreaming. But I can see that my mindfulness is very weak when I wake up. Can you recommend something
Well,
to look out for?
when you, if you dream, know that you're dreaming. If you know you're dreaming, the next step would be that you could begin to control the dream. Almost always a dream is the same thing with different imagery or whatever done over and over and over again, like you're being chased by something. And it doesn't matter about whether you turn this corner or that one, or this thing happens or that thing happens. It's always the feeling of being chased. Another kind of dream is always looking for something. For example, you're looking for a particular motorcycle, and so you go through the back alley or the junkyard, looking at every motorcycle that's there. You keep looking and looking and looking and looking, and at the end of the dream, you've not never found it, or maybe you do find it at the end of the dream. The question is, do you know that this is a dream? You wake up enough to know that you're in a dream.
And if there is no dreaming involved between getting conscious and sleeping,
Well,
no REM.
there's quite a lot of physiology that happens in the brain if we go down the Western mentality, but with the teachings of the Buddha, what he would say is uh, to be mindful and alert even while you're asleep. If you're dreaming, know you're dreaming. Because if you are dreaming and you know that you're not dreaming,
It's the prerequisite.
Yeah, what dreaming generally is, it's a problem that you're trying to solve, getting away from something that's chasing you or looking for something. There's also other kind of dreams, like flying dreams, where you feel really, really free. Okay, but people generally don't have those kind of dreams. But my question to you is, what kind of dreams do you have? Can you at least wake up to the point of recognizing what kind of dream is this? Is this a dream of being chased? Is this a dream of me looking for something or chasing after things? In fact, if you think about it, it's the same dream. It's just what's the object that's being looked for? Is it me that they're looking for, or is it me looking for something along the way? But that's generally the kind of desire kind of dreams. So the other kind of dream would be the dream of flying or freedom or bursting open, these kind of dreams, the kind of dreams of freedom. So figure out for yourself. Wake up. Look at what kind of dreams you're having. If you're having the kind of dreams that we were mentioning, they are associated actually with taking ourselves down, that we can't get what we want, or they will catch us. It's a feeling of defeat. For the flying kind of dreams, it's more like a winner's dream, getting away from it all, being really free. So then the question would be, well, what kind of dreams do you have? Do you have the same recurring kind of dreams over and over again? Or do you have uh, very slight, distant dreams that are too hard to pin down? Or do you have no dreaming at all? There's two kinds of no dreaming at all. One is that they're so out of it that even though they're dreaming away, they don't have a clue. And then there's also the state where no dreaming is needed because there's nothing to do. There's nothing to find and no place to hide and nothing to hide from. Then we don't have those kind of dreams. So that's what I would recommend for dreams is if you've got one, know it. Know that you're dreaming. The next thing after that would be take control of the dream. Start guiding it. So if you're being chased, get away, get free. If you're looking for something, go ahead and find it. Change the dream. Take control of it. Become a winner.
It's mostly immediately so that I don't really, I mean, I remember having those kind of dreams when I was a kid, and I already started intuitively just playing around with the images and going forth and back and all that stuff. And now it's more like it's everything is so disintegrated that it doesn't even occur like a real dream anymore. It's just like immediately from a distance and immediately some kind of third person thing going on. Not really
Basically,
this.
not much to them anymore. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's actually the bottom line for the Buddha. Because in the time of the Buddha, like many other systems in society, his old dream reading and dream interpretation was a great big deal. And the Buddha made nothing of it. Never mind. Don't worry too much about your dreams. Just know that you're dreaming, was his answer to that. Because the dreams don't mean anything until you see them well enough to get the lesson from them that they're trying to teach you.
Is it the
That's why
pre-practice for being able to control the waking up process, or is it not really connected to this?
no, it's actually the same mechanism.
Ah,
It really is the same thing. So what you're talking about is, oh, tomorrow I've got to get up early because of some call or the business meeting that I normally don't have.
yeah.
So I got to go to work at 7 tomorrow morning, which I normally go to work at 9. Okay, so if we're correct, we program that at night. We go to bed early with the intention of I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to wake up on time. I'm not going to miss this thing. And then the first time we wake up, we say, oh, what time is it? We look at the clock and we figure out, oh, I got plenty of time. I woke up on time. That happens that happens to people on a regular basis. It would happen even more often if we'd stop relying upon the cell phone and start relying upon nature. Like a good example of that is when the sun comes up, get up. But the best way to have that is by having your window face to, I mean, your bed face towards the window, so when the sun rises, you get a full face of it. That's the time then to get up. That's the kind of a natural clock.
Unless you live in Sweden and the sun basically never goes down, then that can be different with that. Because I lived there for a while, and sometimes the sun comes up at 3 in the morning.
Yes, that's the point that I'm making is definitely tropical, possibly temperate, and a no-no in the Arctic. Otherwise, you'll be sleeping for 6 months at a time, which the bears do, by the way, so I've heard. Well, does anybody else have anything? Beta, you got your hand up. No? Okay. Does anybody else have anything? I hope that today this has been a really great day. This has been really enjoyable. And thank you, Christoph, for presenting us with this uh, beautiful moment. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to say? Jamie, how about you?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Oh, you got a dog. Oh, that's what you want to say, Daniel. I see it. Uh-huh. Gosh, they look so alike, don't they? That it looks just like Pumbua here.
Dogs are good teachers.
Yes, I've learned a lot from dogs. In fact, but dogs are better teachers than humans often. Okay, guys, thank you very much. This has been a really delightful day. Thank you. See you later.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye, guys.
See you, everybody.